biggest challenge that I've helped clients face in terms of complexity is assessing the workforce. For a concept that should be so straightforward, you're either in scope or you're out of scope. It's increasingly difficult, not just in relation to qualifying earnings and how pay reference periods work, but also just assessing who is working ordinarily in the UK, where you've got an internationally mobile workforce. What do you do about consultants, secondees, 0 hours workers, all these sort of odd individuals who sort of don't fit the kind of the atypical category of employee, and why that had to be quite so complicated. So I think that that's the kind of one of the biggest challenges that we've been helping clients face.
From a payroll point of view, I think it's to echo what Vanessa says, it's the people who are non-standard. If you turn up, do a 40-hour week and you're on 25,000 a year, lovely, and you're aged over 22, we all know what the situation is. We get a large number of questions about, well, what about this employee who's on maternity, this employee who's on long-term sick? Does the payment the employee is receiving from the sickness insurance account? Things like that. You mentioned 0 hours workers. Not many of our clients have 0 hours workers, to be fair, but again, that raises questions, and I think it is anybody who is non-standard causes a question, and I think unfortunately that's one area where the regulator's documentation is somewhat lacking, which is a shame. The detailed guidance that they have on the website is really very good for most things, but these peculiar payroll examples, I think, is where just a document with 30 or 40, this employee is this employee is this, will be really useful for employers. And what we're finding is that we're having to contact the regulator ourselves and ask the questions in some of these more obscure scenarios.
Well, Jackie, do you find, or have you found, while you've been going through the process, that the regulations that you have to comply with have been a barrier to you in finding a good scheme? Do you think, in general, they can pose a barrier to employers?
Probably not in terms of finding the scheme, more in terms of us deciding what we wanted to do. Mm-hmm. So therefore, when we started when we engaged a third-party supplier to go out to the market for us, he brought some things into the conversation that we just hadn't anticipated at all, which made us go back a stage before we could go forward a stage. And this was around the 0 hours workers. So, we have quite a big proportion of those within our workforce. So how are we going to deal with those? But actually the big surprise that I hadn't come across in any of my sort of reading or communications or discussions so far was the different contribution level options at the minimum level. And that was actually quite a knotty conversation for us to have, to actually determine which of the options we went with, because then nobody would actually offer us a product or price up a product based on, they needed to know the contribution levels first. Mm-hmm. So we thought it was just a straight base salary, but actually there's lots more options within that.
So then how do you create trust and confidence in a pension scheme amongst employees?
I think that's probably one of the key questions to ask, because unless you do have that sense of engagement and willingness for employees and employers to get into dialogue around this, you really do run the risk of finance directors having to pay for lots and lots of pensions contributions but not seeing any real return on their investment. And I think this is a key point. We mustn't forget that from the employer's point of view, pension contributions, benefit contributions, reward strategy is all cost that needs to have some kind of positive payback. There needs to be a return on that investment. And that's why issues such as communications and the perceived value of the benefits being provided are absolutely key.
Employers will only provide pensions to people or to their staff if their staff value it and want it. And going back a number of years, people saw the pension as a very important part of the reward package. Yeah. With the demise of DB, with the fact that we had a very voluntary system for saving through defined contribution pensions, we've lost that to some extent. And that's one of the key challenges. So I think we need to make pensions more attractive for people. We need to make them more accessible. For us, that means simplicity is absolutely key. All we're doing is getting people to put some money away for their future. You invest it, you hope it grows. Pensions shouldn't be that complicated, but actually, as an industry, we've done a fantastic job, of making something that is quite intuitive into something that is just really horrible for most people to understand.